Hell is portrayed as a place of despair, punishment, rebellion, and, in some cases, a reflection of the human condition. It is often depicted as a realm of torment and suffering and has been a subject of fascination and dread throughout human history. And yes, if there was a hell, it would definitely be this place. Kiri had suffered grievous injuries, yet he summoned the strength to report to his esteemed ruler, Highness Baron. Baron cradled Kiri in his arms, realizing that Kiri's life was slipping away. In this final act of devotion to his emperor, Kiri found solace in the knowledge that he had served his emperor to the best of his abilities. Baron, however, could hardly bear the anguish of this loss. In this moment, all he wished for was to see Kiri muster the strength to rise once more, to lift his sword, and never cease fighting. Regrettably, it was too late. The damage was irreparable. Kiri would never again stand beside his beloved Highness Baron in the throes of war. In his heart, Baron knew that he was holding on to impossible hopes. Overwhelmed with grief, Baron cried out in anguish, for he had lost not just a loyal companion, but a piece of his own soul. Kyrus, a unique nation forged through the collaboration of both dragons and humans, made a bold request to Baron's homeland, Sekrisha. They sought the coveted treasure held by Sekrisha, the axis of time. However, their request was met with a resounding rejection, setting in motion a harrowing conflict, the genesis of what would ultimately become the final war to engulf Baron's homeland. Yes, this was the beginning of Baron's homeland's last war. In the grim aftermath, only one figure remained standing, and that was Baron Sekrisha, the resolute king of Sekrisha. With unwavering determination, he stood against the might of Kyrus, willing to sacrifice even his own life for the sake of his homeland's honor and glory. Though Baron was acutely aware of his impending demise, he refused to yield. His spirit remained unbroken, and he was not prepared to halt his journey, not even at this dire moment. Even in his critical condition, Baron persisted in the fight for his nation, a testament to his unyielding resolve. After all, Baron was the blade of Sekrisha, the combination of Kyrus' formidable magician core, Valken, and the instigator of this turmoil. The erratic King Planche unleashed a nightmarish reign of terror upon Baron's homeland. Together, they plunged Baron's motherland into an unimaginable abyss of suffering and chaos. The commander of Valken, Arson, extended a courteous introduction and expressed his satisfaction at meeting Baron. Inquisitively, he inquired about the name of the king of Sekrisha. However, Baron, with a heavy heart and a sense of duty paramount in his mind, replied that he had forsaken his own name. At that moment, he considered himself nothing more than a loyal blade, dedicated to serving his king and protecting his nation. Arson was deeply moved by Baron's unyielding determination and unshakable resolve. He knew he would forever remember this remarkable warrior, the king of Sekrisha, who had faced insurmountable odds with unwavering courage. In a final, fateful act, Arson unleashed his ultimate attack, intending to bring about Baron's demise. In that critical moment, Baron's life flashed before his eyes. He saw the entirety of his life, the rise and fall of his beloved motherland, and the countless battles he had fought. And in the next instant, all light faded away. This marked the end of Baron's journey, as well as the culmination of the last war that had consumed his homeland. A new day dawned, and the diligent servants were bustling about, rousing their prince from slumber. The most devoted among them inquired if the prince had enjoyed sweet dreams. However, the conversation took an urgent turn as the servant hurried the prince along, revealing that Prince Planche had already departed, and the prince was running quite late. The mention of Planche seemed to unsettle the prince greatly, and he began speaking in a peculiar manner, recounting an unsettling tale of his arm being severed. The servant was almost petrified by the gruesome imagery the prince described. Strangely, the prince's arm appeared to be perfectly intact, leading the servant to conclude that their highness had experienced a distressing nightmare. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the prince let out a piercing yell, leaving the servants deeply concerned about his well-being. Something was undeniably amiss. The prince continued to hear a name he despised with a passion, repeatedly uttered in his presence. Moreover, his once severed arm had miraculously reappeared. There were attendants in his presence whom he had never seen before, and memories not his own flooded his mind. Breaking the eerie silence, the prince finally addressed Yan, the most loyal servant, with a bewildered query about his identity. Yan then disclosed that the prince was, in fact, Kalyan Ryan Kyrus, the third prince of Kyrus. This revelation plunged Baron into a nightmarish reality, a chilling awakening from a twisted dream. Yan's revelation left Baron, now known as Kalyan Ryan Kyrus, utterly dumbfounded. He sat there in a state of profound shock, staring at his hands, struggling to comprehend the surreal situation. The people he had despised most were now being spoken of openly in his presence, and his own identity had undergone a profound transformation. His countenance mirrored the turmoil within. Yan, overcome with concern, couldn't restrain himself any longer and asked the prince about his condition. Kalyan, grappling with the overwhelming confusion, decided to start from the very beginning. He inquired about the date, to which Yan replied that it was the 28th of April. But when he asked about the year, Yan informed him that it was the year 522. This revelation left Kalyan in a state of utter bewilderment. It was as if he had been transported through time, for this was a decade before the cataclysmic last war that had begun with the axis of time. Something inexplicable and deeply mysterious had occurred, plunging him into a bewildering and unsettling reality. Once, within the royal palace of Sekrisha, a peculiar object with the extraordinary ability to manipulate time suddenly materialized. News of this enigmatic artifact spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of Kairos, the ruler of the continent, who coveted the axis of time. As discussions ensued within the Sekrisha family regarding Kairos' audacious demand for the axis of time, it became abundantly clear that they considered this request utter nonsense. Despite acknowledging Kairos' formidable power, the Sekrisha family firmly believed that the axis of time rightfully belonged to them. Moreover, they were resolute in their determination not to surrender such a perilous and potent object to an adversarial nation at any cost. With unwavering resolve, they swiftly and decisively rejected Kairos' request, signaling their readiness for war as though they had been anticipating this confrontation all along. Baron carried the painful memory of the moment when he had been left with no alternative but to relinquish the axis of time to Kairos. It was a haunting decision that still weighed heavily on his heart. The war had claimed the lives of everyone who had ventured into it, and Baron had been unable to bear the thought of losing any more of them. On that fateful day, Chase Hyungdam, whom he held in high regard, must have witnessed what appeared to be Baron's demise. In retrospect, Baron could only wish that he could somehow turn back time to a period before that ominous object had ever manifested, preventing the tragic chain of events that had unfolded. A surge of realization swept over Baron, and he couldn't remain idle any longer. He hastily rose from his bed, his heart pounding with anticipation. Yan, bewildered by the sudden activity, inquired about the prince's intentions. Baron couldn't contain his excitement as he contemplated the possibility that Chase Hyungdam might have harnessed the power of the axis of time to rewind the clock. What if Chase Hyungdam had granted Baron a final opportunity to avert the catastrophic fate that had befallen his beloved motherland, Sekrisha? The prospect of this chance at redemption filled Baron with determination and urgency, propelling him into action. Yan, still grappling with confusion, managed to find his voice and gently explained to the prince that he comprehended the difficulty of the situation. However, he stressed the importance of not delaying the breakfast gathering any further. In response, His Highness Kalyan managed a smile and apologized to Yan for keeping him waiting. He assured Yan that he would swiftly prepare himself. Determined to make the most of this newfound opportunity, Baron, now Kalyan, was resolute in his commitment to survive and fulfill his role as a Prince of Kairos. At the breakfast banquet, an official announcement indicated that it was now time for Kalyan, the third prince, to join for the meal. Kalyan and Yan entered the grand hall, where Yan discreetly remained behind to express his apologies to His Highness for not urging him to hasten earlier. As they entered, they were surprised to find Prince Randall Sale Kairos, the first prince, already in attendance. In essence, the three princes of Kairos were half-brothers, all hailing from the esteemed bloodline of the holy state of Tensel. By the king's decree, breakfast was prepared for them every morning. However, Kalyan couldn't help but recall from his newfound memories that Prince Randall had consistently treated him as if he were invisible, making for a rather strained relationship among the siblings. Despite the long-standing indifference from Prince Randall, Kalyan displayed respect and courtesy by bowing before the first prince and apologizing for his tardiness. However, the continued and blatant disregard from Randall weighed heavily on Kalyan, leaving him feeling utterly isolated and disheartened. Taking his seat at the table, Baron's thoughts began to dominate. He couldn't help but wonder if the only sibling who was conspicuously absent from this gathering was his most formidable adversary, the one who had been responsible for so much of his suffering. As the announcement proclaimed Planche, the second prince, would now partake in the meal, he entered the hall with a bold and confident stride, swiftly taking his seat. Baron couldn't help but be utterly perplexed by Planche's appearance. The second prince seemed to exude an air of sensuality, looking this hot, with a dress that emphasized his well-built chest and muscular physique. Baron couldn't fathom why a member of royalty would present themselves in such a provocative manner. It left him pondering whether this was indeed the same Mad King Planche he had known of. The way Planche carried himself, exuding charisma and allure, raised a multitude of questions. Judging by his attire and demeanor, Baron suspected that when people had labeled him as mad, they perhaps meant it in an entirely different sense. Baron couldn't help but recall the complex dynamics within the royal family of Kyrus. The fact that the first prince couldn't challenge the second prince was a reflection of the queen's immense influence, especially since Blanche was her biological son. Defying her authority within the royal palace was unthinkable. During breakfast, Blanche noticed Callion's intense glare and criticized his behavior, deeming it impudent. He went further to comment that Callion lacked any trace of decency, asserting that he took after his mother. Baron seethed with rage but resolved to endure the humiliation. He couldn't afford to squander the opportunity that Chase Hunam had seemingly provided him. Nevertheless, a burning anger simmered within him, rising like bile in his throat. After all, this was Blanche Rune Kyrus, the man who had torn his beloved motherland to shreds. Baron yearned to exact vengeance, to cut that throat right then and there. Blanche couldn't tolerate Callion's persistent stare any longer. In a sudden burst of anger, the second prince violently smashed his cup onto the floor, the sound echoing through the hall. He berated Callion, indignant that this young upstart would dare to glare at him so boldly. However, the first prince, Randell, intervened decisively, putting his cup down and ordering both of them to cease their confrontation. But Callion remained unyielding, his gaze fixed firmly on Blanche. In the end, Blanche's irritation reached its breaking point. He announced that he had lost his appetite entirely due to what he described as Callion's disgusting blood-colored eyes. With that, he abruptly left the hall, his exit marked by a trail of tension and unresolved conflict. Despite the tense encounter with Blanche, Callion appeared unfazed by the confrontation. However, the first prince, Randell, had evidently decided that it was time to instill some manners in his younger sibling. He rose from his seat and sternly requested that Callion pay closer attention to his behavior. Furthermore, Randell informed Callion of an upcoming event, the king's birthday celebration, a significant occasion that was evidently of great importance within the royal family. Randell questioned Callion about whether he intended to create a disturbance so close to such an important occasion as the king's birthday celebration. While Callion didn't vocalize his thoughts, he couldn't help but wonder if Randell was implying that the situation was entirely his fault, rather than attributing it to Blanche's provocative behavior. Meanwhile, Yen swiftly checked on His Highness to ensure that Callion was unharmed. Yen's weariness with the royal family was evident, as it seemed that not a day passed without some form of drama. He continued to diligently clean Callion's shoes, demonstrating his unwavering loyalty and care, despite witnessing the often disrespectful treatment his master received from his own family. Callion suddenly halted Yan's cleaning and expressed heartfelt gratitude for the servant's unwavering care and concern. Yan, well acquainted with His Highness, had witnessed many challenging moments. However, this time, there was a remarkable change in Callion's demeanor. Instead of silently shedding tears, he was genuinely smiling. Callion, the third prince of Kyrus, had inherited unique physical traits from the first queen, Dragon Sisphanian, whose hair was as dark as the night sky, and her eyes resembled sacred flames. Among the three princes, Callion was the sole one to bear a resemblance to her in terms of appearance, particularly with his red eyes. However, his inherited powers were considered weak in comparison. Due to the disdain and revulsion Blanche, the second prince, had shown toward Callion's red eyes, Callion had developed an obsessive habit of concealing them. This behavior had been influenced by Blanche's treatment. But Baron couldn't help but find it rather foolish to constantly hide one's eyes simply out of fear of someone like Blanche. It was as if he were glimpsing into someone else's memories, and while he felt a tinge of discomfort, Baron couldn't help but consider it a somewhat irrational choice. Sensing that something was amiss with His Highness, Yan inquired if there was anything specific Callion would like him to do. However, Callion didn't have any particular requests, and simply instructed Yan to return to his duties. Yan, concerned by Callion's unusual behavior, couldn't help but express his observations. He asked if Callion had perhaps read a novel about a knight the previous night, wondering if it had influenced his demeanor. However, Callion clarified that he hadn't read any such novel. Callion, the third prince, had been born to a concubine of humble peasant origins. He had grown up in fear and insecurity, lacking the support of influential backers. His weak nature left him powerless, unable even to protect himself. This vulnerable existence was the current reality that Callion found himself in. Just before the pivotal coming-of-age ceremony, Callion had been brutally assassinated. Curious about his current age, Callion inquired of Yan, who informed him that he would soon turn 15 in 4 months, indicating that Callion was on the cusp of a significant milestone in his life. The public narrative surrounding Callion, the third prince, told a grim tale of an attempted poisoning of Queen Celes followed by a failed attempt at taking his own life by hanging. However, this version of events was widely disbelieved, and many suspected that the truth was far more complex and sinister. Baron had a sense that someone would come for him soon, sensing the impending danger. As Kallian walked ahead, Yan called out to him, urging him to slow down. Baron, now in Kallian's body, was aware that there was only a month or two left before Kallian's death. Uncertain about the fate of his original body, he couldn't afford to wait idly. Time was of the essence, and he needed to act decisively to navigate this unfamiliar and treacherous path. Yan had urged His Highness to slow down out of concern that the prince might stumble or fall. Kallian, however, paid little heed to Yan's caution and instead requested a pair of scissors. Yan, ever dutiful, promptly fetched a pair of scissors and presented them to Kallian. Intrigued by Kallian's unusual request, Yan inquired about the reason behind it. Kallian, looking somewhat suspicious, responded by stating that he needed the scissors to change things. The cryptic response left Yan puzzled, unsure of what His Highness had in mind. Kallian, determined to alter his predetermined future, took decisive action. With a confident and defiant spirit, he used the scissors to cut off his long bangs, which typically obscured half of his face. The sight left Yan and the other servants utterly shocked, as they had never seen their highness behave in such a bold and unconventional manner. Yan expressed concern, noting that Prince Planche would likely despise this change. Kallian, however, explained that he couldn't continue to live as an obedient and meek individual just to appease Planche's preferences. He assured everyone not to worry, as he had a plan and was confident that he could handle the situation. Later, when Prince Planche briefly glanced at Kallian, he remarked that Kallian seemed to have lost his mind. Yan couldn't contain his agitation, but when he noticed the mischievous smile on Kallian's face, he realized that this was all part of His Highness's calculated plan, and this is exactly what he meant when he said that he would take care of things. Yan fully grasped His Highness's intentions, understanding the bold move Kallian had made. However, Planche appeared visibly disappointed by Kallian's defiance. He referred to Kallian by the derogatory name Bloody Eye. Quick to correct him, Kallian firmly asserted his name as Kallian. Planche, with a sinister grin, agreed to address him by his proper name. But in a sudden and alarming turn of events, Planche abruptly brandished a knife, clearly intending to harm the person directly in front of him, Yan. The shock of the moment left Yan frozen in place, unable to react. However, Kallian swiftly recognized the danger and, with heroic determination, intercepted the knife midway, preventing it from reaching Yan. In doing so, he sustained a severe injury to his hand, causing a pool of blood to form on the floor. Yan was astounded by Kallian's courage and selflessness. In a shameless display, Planche claimed that the knife had slipped from his hand and pretended to express concern for Kallian's injured hand, feigning brotherly care. Seizing the opportunity, Kallian rose and approached Planche, boldly placing the bloodied knife back on the table. With unwavering resolve, he assured his loving brother that he was perfectly fine with whatever had just transpired, a subtle but powerful statement of his defiance. Back in their room, Yan, still trembling from the recent traumatic incident, managed to treat and bandage Kallian's wound. He strongly suggested calling for a healer as soon as possible, concerned about the severity of the injury. However, Kallian dismissed it as a minor cut, downplaying the situation. Kallian then directly questioned Yan about why he hadn't dodged the earlier attack, emphasizing that Yan had clearly known the attack was aimed at him. He inquired about Yan's course of action if Kallian hadn't intercepted the attack. Kallian couldn't understand why Yan hadn't avoided such an obvious threat. Yan, not one to be underestimated, explained that he had his reasons for not dodging the attack. He was well aware that if he had avoided it, the knife would have struck Kallian directly, providing Planche with a convenient excuse to harm him. It was a calculated decision meant to protect His Highness, even though it resulted in Kallian getting hurt. Kallian, feeling the adrenaline and anxiety coursing through him, decided that he needed to calm down and wash his face. He requested that no one enter while he did so. Yan still wanted to assist His Highness, but Kallian made it clear that he didn't require any further help. He also warned Yan not to even consider calling for a healer while he was away. Baron, inhabiting Kallian's body, had noticed a peculiar phenomenon that occurred during the recent confrontation. When he had subconsciously attempted to use aura to protect against Planche's attack, he had experienced a sudden pain in his heart. This raised questions about the nature of Kallian's abilities. To confirm his suspicions, Baron decided to reenact the situation and assess the current condition of Kallian's body. As he began this process, he was astounded to sense the presence of 3 mana circles near the heart. It became evident that Kallian was not only a magician but possessed a unique and powerful magical capability. A few days had passed since the incident, and Yan remained deeply concerned about His Highness's lingering injury. Despite the passage of 3 days, Kalyan seemed calm and unperturbed, but Yan couldn't shake his worry. During this time, the royal tailor, Seton Slake, entered the room to complete the preparations for something important. Seton greeted the prince but halted suddenly, appearing flustered. When asked about the issue, the tailor made a mistake and addressed Kalyan by his mother's name, Freya. Yan scolded the tailor for his blunder, prompting Seton to apologize again. Baron, who had grown tired of these reactions, understood that Kalyan had faced difficulties due to his resemblance to his mother, whom he had never met. This likeness had led Kalyan to develop an aversion to his own reflection, to the extent that he had removed all the mirrors from his room. Kalyan attempted to defuse the situation, stating that he was aware of his resemblance to Freya. He then encouraged the royal tailor to continue his work. Seton proceeded to take Kalyan's measurements and expressed concern about the prince's size, suggesting that he should eat more. Kalyan, already irritated, reassured Seton that he was eating well, but his physical stature seemed to naturally concern others. The royal family of Kairos were esteemed descendants of dragons, specifically tracing their lineage back to 2 of the 8 heroes who had sealed the evil god, Hachara and Sisphanian. Sisphanian's direct line of Kairos royalty had been blessed with the power of healing and magical abilities, known as Sisphanian's blessing. Given this heritage, Kalyan's injury should have healed rapidly, and he should have been able to use magic without any issues. However, Kalyan was experiencing an unusual problem. Every time he used mana, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. This presented a significant issue, as it hindered his ability to use aura or magic effectively, leaving him vulnerable, especially in the face of potential assassins. Seton, the royal tailor, decided to bring the prepared clothes for Kalyan. As Baron contemplated the situation and pondered who might possess knowledge about mana, Seton reminded him about the upcoming king's birthday celebration. This triggered Baron's realization that the great magician, Ellen Manasal, would also be present at the event. Baron recognized that he needed to meet Ellen Manasal at any cost to address his concerns and seek a solution to Kalyan's predicament. Ellen Manasal was a revered figure in the world of magic, considered one of only 3 or 4 individuals who had achieved the status of a 7th circle magician. He was the idol of all magicians and held a prominent place in magical history. In the past, Ellen Manasal had been invited to the king's birthday celebration in Kairos. However, stories of an incident that led to his refusal at the door had spread to the neighboring nation, Sekrisha. Despite this setback, Ellen Manasal continued to excel in his magical pursuits, and 10 years later, became the continent's only magician to attain the 8th circle, proving the extent of his abilities. Baron recognized that there was no one better equipped than Ellen Manasal when it came to knowledge of mana. He believed that Ellen would be able to help Kalyan with his current issue. However, Kalyan didn't know what had happened back then, but Kairos doesn't treat magicians well, so he wondered if Kairos would agree to his request. The Bryson family, Blanche's mother's family, held significant influence within the Kairos kingdom, which was the reason why numerous knights traveled through the region. Baron recognized that, even if it was merely to balance the power of the Bryson family, he needed the support of magicians. Furthermore, if he could gain Ellen's support, it might offer a chance to prevent the impending war that Blanche seemed determined to initiate. Before addressing the matter of seeking Ellen Manasal's help, Kalyan had to deal with the individuals who were preoccupied with adding more lace and ribbons to his attire. In a firm and assertive voice, Kalyan made it clear that he had no interest in having any ribbons or frills on his clothing. His straightforward request aimed to ensure that his appearance remained as he desired it, free from unnecessary embellishments. The royal tailor struggled to envision Kalyan's clothing without lace and bells, as such embellishments were likely a customary part of the designs he was used to creating. Meanwhile, Kalyan found it perplexing to comprehend what exactly the tailor was attempting to fashion for him. The following day, Prince Kalyan was peacefully enjoying his morning tea. As time passed, Baron was gradually becoming more accustomed to his new life. His hand had almost completely healed, and Blanche had been deliberately ignoring Kalyan since the recent incident, which, in Baron's view, was a preferable situation. Yan, the loyal servant, then informed Kalyan about his schedule for the day. In the morning, he had a horseback riding lesson, and later on, he had dinner plans with the Queen and Viscount Bryson. Kalyan was okay with meeting the Queen, but he couldn't quite comprehend why Viscount Bryson was included in the plans. Yan explained that these arrangements were made in preparation for the upcoming celebration of the king's birthday, and they needed to discuss various matters related to the event. Callian acknowledged that encountering Viscount Bryson wasn't something entirely unexpected, as they would likely have crossed paths sooner or later. When Yan inquired about whether he intended to engage in stamina training that day as well, Callian displayed his characteristic composure and reassured Yan not to be concerned about his well-being. Callian seemed prepared to handle his schedule, including the physical demands of stamina training. During the training sessions, things didn't go as smoothly as Callian had hoped. He found himself struggling, panting heavily, and it felt as though he might collapse from exhaustion. Marilyn Fiat, who was assisting the prince with his training, observed that Callian was faring poorly and noted that his overall physical condition was deteriorating gradually. Callian himself was aware of his declining stamina despite his efforts to exercise, and it became increasingly clear that there was a significant issue at hand. Marilyn's suggestion that Callian should see a healer as soon as possible was met with a swift refusal from the prince. Callian understood the risk involved in exposing his mana circles, and it was crucial to keep his magical abilities hidden, even from those close to him like Yan. Acting recklessly could endanger his life. Callian reassured Marilyn that he would improve over time, downplaying the seriousness of his condition. Their conversation was then interrupted by a training session for the knights, led by their commander. The intense training and commands given during the session brought back memories for Baron, reminding him of his past experiences. Marilyn mentioned that they were at the training grounds of the Papal Knight Corps, which explained Callian's interest in the location. Callian was well aware of the role of the Knight Corps in maintaining the king's authority and balance of power within the kingdom. However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by Commander Papal, who requested that Callian leave the training area, claiming that the knights were disturbed by his presence and couldn't train effectively. Marilyn, angered by the commander's tone, quickly informed him of Callian's identity as the third prince. She insisted that Commander Papal should show respect to the prince. In response, Commander Papal boldly stated that he had no knowledge of Callian's royal status and had mistaken him for some unknown individual who was secretly observing their training, referring to him as a rat scoundrel. This misunderstanding added a layer of tension to the situation. Commander Papal's initial response showed no remorse for almost mistaking Callian for a mere intruder trying to secretly observe the training. He appeared shameless about his behavior, which further incensed Marilyn. She raised her voice, scolding the commander for his audacious conduct, especially in front of the third prince. In an attempt to justify his actions, Commander Papal questioned why Marilyn was being so sensitive when the prince himself didn't appear to mind. However, as his gaze fell upon Callian, he noticed a significant change in the prince's demeanor. Callian was now visibly enraged, a stark contrast to the timid and fearful demeanor he had displayed in the past. Papal vividly remembered the prince as a weak and timid figure, and he couldn't comprehend the sudden transformation in Callian's attitude and spirit. This newfound assertiveness and strength puzzled the commander. Callian, choosing to deal with Commander Papal calmly, asked him a pointed question about his duty. Papal stood there with a frown, seemingly taken aback as if the prince had just reprimanded him. However, Callian's attempt to address the situation was interrupted by a group of knights who came to Commander Papal's aid. They questioned Callian's presence and dismissed him as nothing more than a nuisance. It was clear that, in their eyes, even the knights looked down on the third prince. Commander Papal, attempting to maintain his authority, told the prince that they were in the middle of their training session and couldn't entertain his questions at the moment. He suggested that Callian should depart and attend to his own responsibilities. The situation escalated as Callian, the third prince, asserted his authority and made it clear that he expected Commander Papal to answer his question. The knights present were becoming increasingly apprehensive, and even Commander Papal seemed to realize that further resistance would be unwise. Reluctantly, Commander Papal responded by stating that his duties were to enhance the strength of the royal family's forces and to safeguard both the royal family and the kingdom. Callian acknowledged that this was indeed the correct answer, and it seemed that he had a test in mind for the commander, which added an element of intrigue to the situation. Callian's actions took a more assertive and confrontational turn as he broke a piece of a branch from a nearby tree and approached Commander Papal. He accused the commander of being a failure at both of the duties he had just mentioned earlier. Papal, already irritated, demanded an explanation for this statement. Callian took his time to elucidate, asserting that based on what he had observed so far, Commander Papal's training was in complete disarray. To prove his point, Callian suddenly struck the piece of branch he was holding and launched an attack on the commander, catching him off guard. Papal realized the seriousness of the situation. If he failed to block this attack, it could be life-threatening. Callian continued to press his point, emphasizing that the protector of the royal family, and the king should never address a member of the royal family in such a derogatory manner. He also brought up the fact that the commander had hurt the prince by wielding a sword against him. Callion's desire for vengeance was clear, and Commander Pable couldn't help but wonder if this was the same third prince he had known. Feeling cornered and recognizing that there was no way out of the situation, Commander Pable eventually knelt down and begged for forgiveness. He clarified that he had never intended to commit treason. However, Pable couldn't hide his anger at the humiliation he had suffered, and he swore that he would never forget it. Yan couldn't believe his ears when Callion explained that he had picked up the horse, whom he named Raven, on his way. Callion introduced the horse with a somewhat embarrassed smile. He revealed that he had spotted the horse after the commotion at the knight's training ground had settled down. Apparently, Prince Planche had failed to tame this particularly ferocious horse. Yan was furious and continued to scold His Highness, questioning whether it was really acceptable for him to just bring Prince Planche's horse like this. Callion pointed out that there weren't any restrictions, and anyone could keep the horse. It seemed like Callion had some mischievous plans in mind involving the horse, and Yan was undoubtedly concerned about the consequences of this decision. Suddenly, Callion is seen clenching the left side of his chest, and he was in pain. The pain in his chest was a clear reminder that he had pushed his body too hard during the training. Yan was concerned and wanted to inquire about what had happened at the training ground, but Callion interrupted him and urged him to get ready for dinner. As they made their way back, Yan asked about Raven's behavior and whether the horse was known to bite. Callion couldn't provide a definite answer, indicating that even he wasn't entirely sure about the horse's temperament. Incidents do spread like wildfire, and here, two unknown men were speaking about what had happened previously. The one who keenly listened to everything found this topic quite interesting. He claims that he has heard even worms writhe when stepped on. This man then crushes the delicate stem which he was holding in his hand. He declared that even if someone like him attempted to change their roots, it would be impossible. Instead of merely squashing and eliminating the target, they decided it might be more interesting to observe and see how things unfold for now. Adjustments might be possible for most people, but for Baron, acclimating to this environment was proving to be quite challenging. Sitting alongside his stepbrothers as Callion for a meet and greet session, he couldn't help but cast a piercing gaze in the direction of the second prince, Planche. Something seemed off today. Planche's energy appeared to be notably diminished. Baron speculated whether this change in demeanor had anything to do with his own presence, especially considering the Queen and Viscount Bryson were running late. It struck him that Planche was perhaps unable to conceal his true feelings and still bore the innocence of a child. Then, a distinct fragrance filled the room, signaling her arrival, the true powerhouse behind the kingdom, Kyra's current queen, Celis Bryson. After the previous queen succumbed to illness, Celis, who ascended to the role, harnessed the influence of her family, the Brysons, to take command of the Royal Knight Corps. With the majority of the nobility aligning with the Bryson family, Celis's power swelled by the day, while the powerless third prince, Callion, became the subject of mockery even for a mere commander. On their way to the meet and greet session, Viscount Bryson recounted the events of the day at the training ground to Queen Celis. After hearing the entire story, Queen Celis opted to offer appropriate compensation, a decision the Viscount readily supported. Celis then instructed the Viscount to refrain from reporting such trivial matters in the future, as they did not warrant her attention. As the family settled around the dinner table, they exchanged greetings. Queen Celis carefully observed Callion and commented on how much he had grown recently. Callion responded with a wide smile, an expected reaction he seemed to be waiting for. He assured the Queen that he hadn't grown much yet but promised to grow even more in the future. This statement briefly created tension among the family members, with glares exchanged, until Viscount Bryson broke the ice. He agreed with Callion's statement and remarked that he almost didn't recognize him. Viscount Bryson expressed his satisfaction with Callion's new appearance and commented on how, being in a period of growth, he would surely grow taller. However, before he could finish his statement, Queen Celis intervened, signaling him to stop. Viscount Bryson quickly changed the topic, expressing his eagerness to begin the meal and instructing the servant to bring out the food. Callion couldn't help but silently judge the entire Bryson family. He thought the owner of the Bryson Emporium was rather slow-witted. He sighed in exasperation and concluded that the rumors about them were probably true. Callion found this whole situation quite amusing, and he couldn't resist a smile as he took a sip of wine. Meanwhile, Queen Celis continued to scrutinize him. The queen then shifted her attention to her own child, Prince Planche. She expressed her disappointment that Planche hadn't informed her about his horse's disobedience. Planche appeared clueless about how his mother had learned of the situation and responded with an embarrassed smile. Celis remarked that it would have been nice if Planche had informed her earlier. In response, Planche explained that she was already aware of the situation, but he didn't want to draw attention to his own shortcomings. Instead, he blamed the horse, labeling it as useless from the start. The second prince, Planche, seemed to be irritated already, and so he decides to take his leave first. The queen seems to lose her cool at that every moment. 3 weeks later, the kingdom was in full preparation mode for the annual king's birthday celebration. The entire kingdom was adorned with colorful flowers, and the dedicated workers put their hearts and souls into ensuring that everything was perfect for this grand occasion. The citizens of the kingdom were filled with excitement as they witnessed the magnificent preparations, including a congratulatory delegation from the elves, all in honor of their beloved king's special day. The citizens of the kingdom were delighted as they observed the beautifully adorned presents and decorations, and their anticipation for the upcoming birthday banquet grew. They couldn't help but wonder about the busy preparations the princes must be involved in at this very moment. One of them expressed their eagerness to see the princes and admitted to feeling a bit nervous as well. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the royal tailor had arrived to take measurements for the prince's attire. As it was Callion's turn, the tailor was taken aback by what he saw. He regarded the prince with concern and asked if he had been eating well. That's when he notices a sudden gush of blood oozing out of Callion's nose. As Callion's blood dripped onto the floor, a sense of shock and concern washed over him, mirroring the reaction of those around him. Yan, his loyal servant, quickly rushed to his side, clearly worried. He ordered another servant to fetch some fabric, preparing to help his highness. Despite the alarming situation, Callion tried to downplay it, assuring Yan that it wasn't a severe nosebleed and attributing it to his recent lack of sleep. However, the royal tailor, Slake, chimed in with a more concerning observation. He began by apologizing for his presumption and then pointed out that the nosebleed wasn't the only issue. Slake noticed that Prince Callion had also lost a considerable amount of weight. He was certain that the prince hadn't been this skinny just 3 weeks ago. Callion attempted to diffuse the tension with an embarrassed laugh, as if he were trying to make light of the situation. He expressed concern about his recent exercise routine, attributing the nosebleed to his rigorous workouts. However, deep down, Callion knew there was something more concerning at play. Despite his hard work, his stamina had been declining, and the persistent pain when using mana was a constant reminder that there was likely an issue with his heart. Slake, the royal tailor, appeared highly concerned and almost scolded the prince for downplaying the situation. He asked Callion if he had undergone a checkup yet, clearly worried about his condition. Callion, trying to maintain his composure, brushed off the need for a checkup, stating that the nosebleed wasn't severe enough to warrant one. However, he couldn't help but remember the discussion about calling a healer, and he cursed himself for having a nosebleed in front of so many people. Slake couldn't simply let the matter go, as it was evident to him that there was more to Callion's health than just the nosebleed. Callion interrupted, feeling extremely embarrassed. He knew he couldn't brush this off easily. Suddenly, Yan burst into the room, claiming that he knew the cause of Callion's nosebleed. He boldly stated that it happened because Callion had been picking his nose the day before. Yan stood there with a somewhat parental air, arms crossed, and added that he understood how difficult it must have been to reveal such a personal habit to everyone. This unexpected revelation left the others in the room shocked, and Callion was mortified. Yan continued, addressing the concerned individuals and assuring them that Prince Callion was eating well and exercising properly. He attributed the nosebleed to this peculiar habit, urging everyone not to worry too much. With Yan's explanation, Slake became convinced, since Yan knows the prince best, and the issue was settled from his perspective. Yan, the mischievous brat, then winked at his highness, relishing in his success at diffusing the situation. A while earlier, Yan had been genuinely concerned and serious, asking the prince if he was truly alright because he didn't look well. Callion decided to be honest and explained that his condition was related to his ability to use magic and a mana issue. However, Yan seemed to take this as an opportunity to playfully tarnish Callion's image. Fortunately, thanks to Yan's intervention, they managed to move past the awkward moment. Finally, Slake agreed to mend Callion's clothes, but time was limited. Yan reassured him that there was no need to worry, as the prince had other tasks to attend to, granting them more time until the afternoon event. This news was a relief to Slake, and he left the room with a cheerful disposition, stating that he would prioritize repairing the clothes for the upcoming event. Prince Kalyan received a message that the king's lunch was cancelled due to urgent matters and was replaced with individual meetings with each of the princes. This change puzzled Kalyan. It seemed more efficient to meet all the princes together. Nonetheless, he followed the instructions and arrived at the king's room. Nervously, he waited by the door until he received a signal to enter. Once informed that the king was ready to meet him, Kalyan proceeded inside. Kalyan entered the room and saw King Ramain Larun Kairos engrossed in reading something. Despite his busy demeanor, Kalyan offered a respectful greeting to His Highness, but there was no immediate response. Kalyan couldn't help but wonder if the king was intentionally ignoring him, though he knew such behavior was considered rude. Finally, the king gestured for Kalyan to approach and sit. In response, Kalyan extended his birthday wishes to King Ramain, acknowledging his 38th birthday. The king then inquired about Kalyan's well-being, noting that he appeared to be doing well. Kalyan couldn't help but reflect on how even the royal tailor and the passing attendants had noticed his rapid weight loss. It became clear to him why the king had chosen to meet with each of his sons individually, despite their tight schedules. If the king were to meet all three princes at once, he'd need to engage in conversation with them, making the process less efficient. It seemed that the king considered spending time with his sons, who were there to congratulate him on his birthday, as a waste. Deep down, Baron found himself thinking that the more he got to know this family, the more chaotic it appeared. A father who showed little care for his sons, a first prince who seemed indifferent to everything, a second prince who lacked etiquette, and a queen with enough power to challenge the king. Most importantly, among them, there was someone with murderous intent toward Kalyan. The question that lingered in Baron's mind was, who could it be? Who had sent an assassin after Kalyan? The citizens of the kingdom were buzzing with excitement as they discussed the recent event at the town square. It was all about the appearance of the third prince, Kalyan. This topic had become the talk of the town, and virtually everyone had heard about it. Kalyan had made a striking transformation, and when compared to him, the second prince, Planche, looked completely disheveled. Some people believed that things wouldn't really change and that busybodies were just exaggerating. However, there was a prevailing sense that something was indeed different this time, unlike the past. The announcements were made, and then the third prince, Kalyan Rain Kairos, made his entrance into the hall. People in attendance were taken aback because the rumors had turned out to be true. The second prince, with his black hair and red eyes, bore a striking resemblance to Sisphanian. Furthermore, Kalyan had trimmed his bangs that used to cover his face, and he wore a red brooch. This seemed like a declaration that he would no longer hide. After a while, Yan was seen whispering to the prince, inquiring why everyone was looking at his outfit. Before hearing an answer, Yan jumped to his own conclusion, stating that it was because Kalyan looked great in that attire. He also mentioned that Seton Slake, the royal tailor, would have been pleased to see Kalyan like this. However, Kalyan wasn't entirely satisfied with that explanation. He corrected Yan, explaining that people were looking and thinking about how someone like the third prince had chosen to wear such gemstones. He added that it had been quite challenging to stop the tailor from adding all sorts of decorative elements to the outfit. Kalyan told Yan to be glad that it had stopped at this level because it could have been even more extravagant. Yan insisted that Kalyan looked great, but they both seemed somewhat oblivious to the deeper meaning behind the brooch they had chosen so thoughtlessly. While walking around, Kalyan took the opportunity to inquire about Yan's family. He knew that Yan's family also resided in Kairos, the capital of Kairos. Yan informed him that his little sister and father were back in their hometown, while the rest of his family lived in Kairos. Kalyan then asked Yan if they would come to the royal palace. Yan replied that they would definitely come if they received an invitation. In return, Yan asked His Highness about when he should have Raven, the horse, on standby in the garden. Kalyan could sense that Yan wanted to change the topic quickly and might not want to answer certain questions. He was quite understanding, and so, Kalyan played along and told him that for now, they should keep Raven aside and wait for the right time. Kalyan looked down at the crowd below and expressed his desire to meet someone. Yan was momentarily shocked, wondering who this person could be. Kalyan then asked Yan if he knew why this ballroom was called the Siegfried Hall. Yan was well aware of the reason. It was named after the surname of the first patriarch and one of the 8 heroes of the Two-Way War, Duke Quitros Hans Siegfried. The Siegfried family, the sole duke family in Kairos, had great power and had remained loyal to the royal family for 500 years, dedicated to defending the territory of Sisphanian. This guy was so deeply impressed to hear this story when he was Baron. Yan quietly inquired if the person Kalyan wanted to meet was present in the hall. Kalyan confirmed that the person he wanted to meet was indeed present, and it was Duke Slayman Hans Siegfried. Duke Siegfried had an impressive and cool personality that stood out among the crowd. Kalyan wanted to meet him because he was deeply impressed by the Siegfried family's long-standing loyalty, and Duke Siegfried was the type of person Baron liked. As expected, with just a subtle flow of magic, Duke Siegfried instantly detected Kalyan's presence and commented on the situation, noting that it seemed Duke Siegfried was showing interest in Kalyan. After all, Duke Siegfried was one of the 5 sword masters of the continent and had exceptional abilities, so he wouldn't miss any signals from Kalyan. Kalyan expressed his gratitude for Duke Siegfried's attention but suggested that it was still too early to reveal themselves. He instructed Yan to act as if they hadn't noticed anything for now. The party officially began with the king expressing gratitude to everyone for their congratulations and announcing that they should enjoy the night. They raised a toast to Kairos. However, amidst the festivities, Kalyan and Yan were busy plotting for another motive. They made their way out of the castle through the windows and successfully descended to the ground. Down below, Raven was eagerly waiting for them. Kalyan had anticipated this, and he was pleased to see that Raven was so intelligent and gentle. Yan cautioned him not to be deceived, as Raven was a completely different creature in Kalyan's absence. However, Kalyan was too captivated by Raven's quick-wittedness to pay much attention to Yan's warning. Kalyan then confirmed with Yan that they only needed to go to the front gate and wait. Upon arriving at the front gate, Kalyan and Yan overheard a heated conversation. The guards were emphatically informing someone that they couldn't enter without an invitation, despite the person having traveled a long way to attend the festivities. The guards were unwavering in adhering to the rules, clearly stating that the individual couldn't enter and should leave. It was at this moment that Kalyan realized that the long-awaited person had finally arrived. The man introduced himself as Ellen Manassel and questioned the guards one last time, seeking confirmation that they were refusing him entry solely because of the missing invitation. The guards were clearly on high alert upon hearing the name Ellen Manassel. However, one of the head guards stepped forward and reiterated that regardless of his name, an invitation was required for entry. Ellen smiled and confidently mentioned that Kairos seemed to judge their guests based on their appearance. Kalyan was certain that this interaction wasn't going as smoothly as it did with other guests. He agreed that it was problematic to differentiate people based on their attire, but it seemed like Ellen Manassel was intentionally nitpicking, as if he were actively looking for a reason not to enter Kairos. Without hesitation, Ellen Manassel quickly turned away and agreed to leave. Kalyan was worried about sending him back like this, but Yan appeared even more anxious about the situation. Yan explained to Kalyan that it was the king's orders not to allow anyone to leave during the festival. However, Ellen was quick to depart, and Kalyan was certain they would lose him at this rate. In a hurry, Kalyan urged Yan to do whatever he could to delay the soldiers. With that, he spurred Raven into action and tried to leave, despite the guards' attempts to stop him, as leaving during the festival was against the king's orders. Kalyan was unstoppable, and the guards couldn't prevent him from leaving. They quickly announced that the prince had gone outside and it was time to prepare the horses and follow the prince right away. Yan was determined to stop the guards and protect Prince Kalyan. He remembered His Highness's words and knew he had to act quickly. Yan pulled himself together, focusing on his role as Prince Kalyan's attendant. Protecting the prince was his sole responsibility. Yan then raised his voice and yelled at the guards, telling them to stop, as Duke Siegfried had given permission for Prince Kalyan to leave. The guards and soldiers paused, surprised by Yan's confident use of the Duke's name. One of them questioned Yan's authority to use the Duke's name so freely. That's when Yan untied his hair, revealing his true identity as Soroyan Siegfried, the eldest son of Duke Siegfried. Yan's transformation made him look incredibly striking and commanding. Laughter and cheerful sounds filled the palace lawns as Yan and Duke Siegfried shared this moment. Yan felt a bit embarrassed by the laughter, but he was more focused on the implications of the situation. He referred to the man as his father, acknowledging Duke Siegfried's role in this clever plan. Duke Siegfried expressed disbelief that his son had pulled off such a smart move, and then pulled Yan into a warm hug, reminiscing about the son who left to care for a young child. While Duke Siegfried was happy about the situation, Yan couldn't help but worry about the potential consequences. He feared that if this story spread, it could strain the relationship between his family and the king. Duke Siegfried reassured Yan, saying that King Rama intended to overthink things, and if Kalyan had simply received some help from the Siegfried family, the king would likely view it with suspicion rather than gratitude. Duke Siegfried understood the delicate nature of the situation. If it became known that there was a relationship between the Siegfried family and Prince Kalyan, and if Kalyan received help without facing punishment, It would essentially confirm an amicable relationship between the two parties. This could raise suspicions, especially from Bryson, who might see it as a problem. To avoid complications, it was best to keep the matter quiet and treat it as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Meanwhile, Callian continued to chase after Ellen Manasel. Ellen, perceptive as ever, sensed that there was more to Callian's pursuit than a mere lack of an invitation. He decided to confront Callian directly and asked him why he was following this elderly man. Callian took a moment to study Ellen's features. It appeared that Ellen had reached the 7th circle in magic, a level where one's aging regressed. Callian couldn't help but notice this remarkable characteristic. After a brief pause, Callian replied to Ellen's question. He mentioned the lateness of the hour and questioned whether Ellen intended to simply turn back at this point. Ellen cryptically responded by comparing his situation to trying to open a closed door with a high threshold. Callian couldn't help but wonder if Ellen was subtly mocking him, but he remained determined to assist in any way he could. Callian didn't mince words. He pointed out to Ellen that he had chosen a closed door when another was wide open for him. He further inquired about where Ellen had placed the invitation that was given to him, seemingly challenging him for his nitpicking tendencies. Callian humorously added that he had been preoccupied with blocking the wind, forgetting to sweep the dirt off the threshold. He also expressed his surprise at the guards making a mistake while trying to keep people out. Ellen Manasel was taken aback by Callian's response. He couldn't decide whether this young prince was refreshingly honest or simply shameless. Nonetheless, Ellen found Callian quite entertaining. From the moment he first laid eyes on Callian, he sensed something unusual about the 14-year-old prince. Ellen swiftly excused himself, needing a moment to process the situation. Ellen Manasel took Callian's hand as if he intended to examine something. He applied pressure to the prince's hand, leaving Callian puzzled. Suddenly, Callian experienced a sharp, piercing pain in his chest, near his heart. The pain was intense, and Callian instinctively clutched his chest, crying out in agony. Following the excruciating pain, Callian quickly realized that Ellen's mana had entered him. Unable to bear the pain, he forcefully pulled his hand away from Ellen's grip. It took a minute or two for the pain to subside, during which Callian leaned on Raven for support. Ellen appeared somewhat disappointed and remarked that even with closed doors, the wind couldn't be entirely blocked. This raised concerns for Callian, as it was apparent that Ellen had already discerned the condition of his body. Callian was initially puzzled by Ellen's words, but then he grasped the meaning behind them. Ellen was correct. There was indeed a point where he couldn't use mana anymore. However, Ellen seemed to understand that the issue wasn't solely related to mana. He questioned whether Callian truly didn't realize that the real problem lay elsewhere. Ellen then gets down to business and straightaway asks Callian why he wants to see him. Callian decided to be direct and honest with Ellen. He admitted that he wanted to meet Ellen Manasel because he wished to take on that name. He admitted that he believed his life was in imminent danger. Ellen was well aware of the precarious situation surrounding the third prince, as Callian was widely disliked and had numerous enemies. Ellen dismounted his horse while simultaneously using silent magic, showcasing his mastery as a 7th circle mage. Callian, astute as ever, recognized this and realized that Ellen was indeed a powerful mage. Ellen then inquired about Callian's intentions. Was he merely trying to prevent something, or was he aiming to eliminate the root cause? Callian responded with a cunning smile, explaining that his immediate goal was prevention, but he ultimately intended to eradicate the source of the problem. He added that if ascending the throne was necessary to achieve his objectives, he was prepared to do so. This revelation impressed Ellen, as it highlighted that for Callian, the throne was just a means to an end, especially considering his frail health as a dying prince. The prince who carried the legacy of Sisfanian. The prince who needed Ellen Manasel for his goal. For Ellen, this situation was immensely intriguing. With a step forward, Ellen politely requested Callian to provide him with the invitation, eager to witness what the young prince was capable of. In a display of formality, Callian Rain Kyrus bowed and greeted his mentor. Callian was fully prepared to demonstrate his abilities, and Ellen Manasel willingly accepted His Highness's invitation. This alliance promised to be the key to saving the prince. Yan was overcome with anxiety, repeatedly questioning his father about whether the people in the royal palace recognized him. Duke Siegfried tried to reassure him, assuring Yan that he had taken care of the situation and there was no need to worry. Yan logically deduced that if people recognized him, he couldn't have stayed by His Highness's side. However, the Duke noted that while Yan was his son, he didn't seem royal, making light of the situation. Yan then inquired about how she was doing. Duke Siegfried informed Yan that she had been doing well in the position of the lower family head that he had abandoned. The Duke got up, stretched, and suggested to Yan that if he wanted to give up serving a child, he was welcome to come back at any time. However, he sighed in concern and mentioned that he guessed he wouldn't be seeing Yan for a while. Yan was perplexed by his father's words, as he was certain they would see each other again in 3 months. The Duke, sensing something was amiss, asked Yan if he was truly considering giving up his position as Kalian's servant. Yan was caught off guard and didn't know how to respond to this unexpected question. Duke Siegfried repeated his question, asking Yan if he truly intended to step down as Kalian's attendant. After a moment of silence, Yan responded, mentioning that Kalian would soon turn 15. The Duke couldn't quite grasp the significance of this statement and sensed his son's confusion. He then asked Yan if he knew the nickname of their Siegfried family, which was the Elephants of Kairos. They had been powerful for a long time and were known as the kings of animals, impervious even to beasts. Yan was still uncertain about why his father was discussing this. The Duke then pulled Yan into another hug and conveyed that the name Yan had sold off was strong and impressive. He wanted Yan to understand that he was capable of achieving whatever he desired. Hugging his son tightly, the Duke expressed that he had grown accustomed to worrying about Yan. It was a moment of reassurance and support from father to son. As the hug grew more intense, Yan yelled in pain and pleaded with his father to stop, emphasizing how much it hurt. He continued to exclaim that he was going to die if the hug persisted. Finally, Duke Siegfried released his son, and Yan, after composing himself, formally greeted his father by addressing him as Duke Siegfried. However, the Duke found this formality inappropriate and rather annoying, so he told Yan to leave immediately. Yan respectfully bowed to his father and assured him that they would see each other next time. As Yan departed, Duke Siegfried couldn't help but reflect on his son's stubbornness, concluding that Yan was truly a Siegfried. Suddenly, he remembered Kalian and what had occurred in the palace. He couldn't help but wonder how and when that rascal had grown so much, and he pondered what Kalian was planning to do. The next day, a carriage arrived and stopped right in front of the palace. Onlookers were left in shock as they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The same crest, 7 red flowers, and a silver cane. The queen gossiped with the Viscount and mentioned that she had heard the magician's contract with Reborn had ended. The Viscount was still confused, unable to understand why this individual was visiting Kairos. From their perspective, it seemed like an obvious decision for him to come since he had experienced something like that. And if it weren't for his relationship with the King of Reborn, he would have left already. They continued to talk about the magician and speculated that he must be visiting due to those rumors. They also wondered if it was true that Ellen Manassel's son had been poisoned. Ellen Manassel got off the carriage with a smile, knowing that his new disciple had done something very cute. This had all been part of a plan. The day before, Kalian had given his master specific instructions. He had asked Ellen to arrive at the palace at exactly 9:30 and to come through the open door this time. Now, Ellen understood what was happening. His Highness was planning to compete with the Bryson family, and it wouldn't be an easy task. Kalian was waiting for the perfect moment to show him off to the nobles and shake up the game. The king's exclusive attendant greeted Mage Manassel and expressed his surprise at his sudden visit. He informed Ellen that his Highness was waiting for him. In the king's room, King Ramain appeared quite surprised when Ellen asked him for a place to stay. He couldn't believe that Sir Manassel wanted to reside in Kairos. Ellen's request for accommodation was indeed correct. In order to compete with Queen Celis, the king had always considered that he would need a power like Ellen Manassel. However, the fact that Ellen offered this arrangement first made the king a bit skeptical. At this moment, the king was left wondering about Ellen's exact intentions and plans. Ellen decided to be honest and told the king that last night at the plaza, he saw a black cat with red eyes. The king was perplexed by Ellen's statement. Ellen went on to explain that the cat appeared to be quite intelligent, so he thought he should teach it a few things. However, he didn't have a place to stay. The king, still trying to grasp the situation, asked Ellen what he intended to teach the cat. Ellen responded that he was planning to teach the cat magic. Furthermore, he wanted to create an environment in which the cat would be comfortable. To achieve this, he needed to assist the owner of the house and tidy it up a bit. King Ramain began to understand the situation and wanted to confirm if Ellen could handle this responsibility properly. Ellen informed the king that he had taken Prince Kalian as his disciple, which meant Bryson couldn't interfere. He also pointed out that he couldn't just teach magic all day long, so if he decided to assist Prince Kalian, no one would be able to stop him. Ellen emphasized that these were Prince Kalian's true intentions and invitation. King Ramain readily agrees to provide a place for Ellen to stay, mentioning that the house was already in a mess, so it couldn't get any worse. However, he also expressed curiosity about Kalian, mentioning that he had heard the child was not special. Ellen pondered what special qualities Callian might have missed in this world. Given that even his health condition was exceptionally unique, Callian seemed to be anything but normal at this point. The king mentioned that he had heard about Callian's numerous fears, even things as seemingly trivial as being scared of horses. He found it hard to believe that the same child who was afraid of horses would chase after Ellen, as it sounded unreal. Ellen was getting a bit frustrated that the king was relying on hearsay rather than being more informed about his own child. Then, Ellen asked the king if he happened to know Callian's height. This seemingly simple question posed a challenge for the king, adding to Ellen's exasperation with the situation. Ellen was growing increasingly frustrated with the king's lack of knowledge about Callian. He even dared to ask the king if he knew Callian's height, highlighting the king's ignorance. This frustration led Ellen to make a bold statement about how sometimes indifference could be a remedy when excessive attention became poisonous. The king, feeling accused and uncomfortable, responded by saying he cherished the princes, particularly Callian, and that Callian was already very precious to him. He moved towards the door, suggesting they end the discussion. However, before the king could finish his sentence, Ellen performed magic, surprising the king and breaking royal protocol. The king was left wondering what the hell was he doing and how Ellen dared to use magic within the royal palace. Ellen proceeded to provide a detailed description to King Ramain about Callian's physical condition. He pointed out how Callian's lips were dry, his breathing was labored, and his skin had taken on a bluish tinge. Ellen even showed the king how Callian's fingernails appeared purplish underneath. He further mentioned that Callian's clothes seemed hastily fixed, indicating that he had lost a significant amount of weight over the past month. Ellen also described how Callian attempted to stand up but was unable to lift his body, and he experienced dizziness. The king was astounded by this information, as it painted a dire picture of Callian's health. Ellen Manhwa concluded by emphasizing that if the king continued to be a bystander like this, he would eventually lose everything. This revelation left the king deeply concerned and pondering the gravity of the situation. Later in the day, a servant approached Yan and expressed concern that it was nearly noon, yet the prince hadn't had his morning tea. Yan reassured the servant, telling her to provide the tea, and he would attend to the prince in case he experienced any coughing fits. Yan entered the room to find Callian still sleeping, and he couldn't help but worry if the events of the previous day had taken a toll on the prince's health. Ian looked at the prince with concern when suddenly, from behind, a voice inquired if the prince was still not awake. To Yan's surprise and shock, it was Ellen Manhwa, who had appeared behind him without warning. Yan was so startled that he let out a yell of fear and questioned where this seemingly ghost-like appearance had come from. Ellen regarded Yan with a look of slight annoyance, as if Yan was being overly uptight. Yan, however, was not pleased with Ellen's casual disregard for palace etiquette. He sternly questioned how Ellen could act so discourteously by teleporting into the Chermal Palace without proper permission. Ellen's response was nonchalant, and he admitted that the outsiders entering the Chermal Palace without permission was indeed unusual. He explained that his method was a bit more complicated than that but was possible because of his proficiency in magic. Yan, now a bit exasperated, tried to refocus the conversation and politely requested that Ellen leave, emphasizing that the prince's health was still not in the best condition. Ellen, standing a bit too close for comfort, casually mentioned that he had visited Reborn a few years ago, and still recognized Yan, despite him having grown up. Then, to Yan's embarrassment, Ellen called him by his childhood nickname, Baby Elephant. Wait, this was meant to be a secret rite. Yan was forced to remember his father, who told him not to worry as he didn't look elegant, so of course no one would suspect him. But now Yan was already caught and that too way too quick. Yan couldn't do anything about it and so he cried in embarrassment. Callian woke up and inquired about how long he had slept, but Yan didn't immediately answer his question. Instead, Yan pointed to Ellen and informed Callian that he had a guest. Callian, still in pain, wondered who this unexpected visitor was. It didn't take long for him to realize that his teacher, Ellen, was here. Ellen handed Callian a small pouch and instructed him to keep it. Curious, Callian opened the pouch to discover pills inside. He asked Ellen if it was medication. Ellen explained that Callian was currently facing two issues: difficulty managing his mana and rapid weight loss, which was why he needed to take one of these pills daily without fail. Callian was touched by Ellen's concern and how he always seemed to understand what was happening with him. Ellen looked at Callian with a blank expression and then asked if he possessed the power of the blessing. Callian did indeed have the power of blessing, which granted him healing abilities and an affinity for magic. However, it felt like even that healing power was somehow fading now. Callian expressed his concern and asked Ellen if he thought there might be a problem with his heart. Ellen, in response, asked Callian if he ever found it strange that these two abilities, healing and magic, were combined in him. Callian had considered this, thinking that perhaps the power of the blessing had strengthened his heart, as both mana and life originated from the heart. Ellen agreed with this notion, stating that the power of the blessing did indeed strengthen the heart. However, he also assured Callian that his power of blessing hadn't disappeared, his heart was functioning normally, and his mana wasn't blocked. Callian was becoming increasingly puzzled and asked Ellen what was actually happening to him. Ellen then posed a question to Callian. What if Sisfanian's blessing hadn't disappeared but was being used to its limits somewhere else? In other words, the power of the blessing was being influenced by something, preventing it from even healing minor wounds. It was at this moment that Callian had a sudden realization. What was affecting him might be poison. Callian was deeply concerned and asked Ellen if it could indeed be poison. Ellen confirmed Callian's suspicion, stating that if it weren't for the blessing, he would have already died. The blessing was actively healing a deadly poison that was putting a tremendous strain on his heart, pushing the healing power to its limits. Furthermore, when Callian tried to use mana, his heart rejected it. Ellen explained that Callian had been poisoned even before Baron had the chance to possess his body. This wasn't something planned at the last minute, it had been set in motion before the assassination attempt. Baron couldn't comprehend why they would bother to hang a child who was already doomed to die. Even Ellen couldn't fathom the kind of person who would orchestrate such a plan and wondered what exactly this kid, Callian, was. Callian stared at the pill in his hand, realizing that it must be the antidote. Ellen confirmed his suspicion and mentioned that the pills were made in a hurry, but he was confident they would work. However, Callian suddenly had a wild idea and asked Ellen for guidance. He suggested taking both the poison and the antidote together. Ellen was shocked by this suggestion but quickly informed Callian that even if he took both, the antidote would only slow down the poison's effects. Callian seemed satisfied with this and was ready to proceed with his plan. Ellen couldn't quite believe what he was hearing and asked Callian if he knew who the culprit was. Callian had a hunch and believed that the source of the poison might be the tea he drank every morning. The tea was the only thing Callian drank in front of everyone, making it easy to monitor if he had consumed it. Additionally, no one usually shared tea with him, making it seem like the safest method for the poison to enter his body. Callian suspected that this might have been the only way for the poison to get into his system. Perhaps the original Callian had noticed what was happening to his body and rejected the poison tea, which might have led to his assassination. However, the situation had changed since Baron had possessed Callian's body, and now no one knew what method the assassins might use to try and kill him. So, at the very least, he could take control of this aspect of his life. Callian explained to Ellen that, until he figured out the method, he needed to keep this all a secret. Ellen, however, asked if this was really the only reason for his secrecy. Callian explained that if it got out that the morning tea was the problem, then Yan and the other servants would be at risk. The culprit had been doing this regularly, and Callian was sure that they believed they couldn't be caught. Ellen understood Callian's concern for Yan and assured him that the baby elephant would be just fine. This statement surprised Callian, and he didn't fully grasp its meaning. Ellen then asked Callian what he intended to do next, showing his interest in Callian's plans. For a moment, Baron's thoughts drifted back to a time when someone had called him foolish and explained that to take someone else's trump card, he had to offer something of his own first. These memories often brought thoughts of his father to the forefront of his mind. Returning to the present, Callian made a request of Ellen to accompany him outside the palace the following evening. Later that day, the servants struggled to wake up Prince Planche, as Her Majesty had come to meet him. Despite their efforts, the second prince remained in bed, seemingly unconcerned. Queen Celis entered the room, scolding her son for reeking of alcohol and for not getting his act together, especially after being prohibited from drinking at the square ceremony. Planche, with a glass of water in hand, asked his mother why she was there and requested that she answer his question and leave. The queen was clearly irritated by her son's attitude as she informed him that Callian had acquired a mentor, none other than the 7th Circle mage, Ellen Manhwa. She mentioned that the aristocrats were already in turmoil, but Planche seemed disinterested in these matters. The queen's anger flared, and she sternly urged Planche to ensure that all the effort she had invested in him wouldn't go to waste. She demanded that he get up and prepare himself immediately. As she left, she warned Planche that many eyes would be watching him today, and he must not disappoint her. Once the queen departed, Planche's frustration boiled over. He forcefully smashed the glass onto the floor, shattering it into pieces. In his anger, he stomped on the glass shards, injuring himself in the process. Concerned, his servants rushed to assist him, but he angrily ordered them to leave. Planche was in a foul mood, and the thought of Callian only fueled his disgust further. The city buzzed with chaotic excitement as it marked the occasion of His Highness King Ramain's birthday. The streets were bustling with activity, and a grand parade was in full swing. The king graciously waved to the crowds, who congratulated him, offered blessings for his future, and wished for Kyra's continued prosperity and glory. In the parade, the princes followed behind the king, attracting the attention of the onlookers. Among the spectators, two individuals exchanged comments about the princes. One expressed a particular desire to see Prince Callian, who was at the very back of the procession. As they walked, Yan inquired about the prince's well-being, his eyes filled with concern. He was relieved to note that Callian's complexion appeared better than it did the previous day. Callian assured him that it was due to having rested well. Callian had his doubts, suspecting that his improved condition might be due to the antidote. Breathing had become easier, and the pain in his heart had lessened. Ian expressed concern about the day's packed schedule, including a horseback riding show and a ball, and worried that Callian might have another nosebleed. Callian, however, reassured Yan with a smile, saying he worried too much. He was confident he could meet the subjects in good condition, which was enough for him. But just as Callian was about to finish his sentence, his attention was suddenly drawn to someone in the crowd. Baron took over Callian's consciousness, and he was transported back to memories of war. He remembered one of his comrades, Kiri. To his surprise, the one he had spotted just now was definitely Kiri. Baron couldn't help but wonder what Kiri was doing in Kairos. Yan and Callian both noticed that Raven, Callian's horse, was acting agitated and moving in a certain direction. They urged the horse to move forward, wondering if there was something of interest in that direction. Callian stopped Raven for the time being, knowing they couldn't go investigate at that moment. Baron, still in control of Callian's mind, communicated a message to Kiri, telling him to wait, as he had a plan to find him soon. After some time, the procession came to a stop, and a man named Melfir Pawloon, the owner of Pawloon Emporium, stepped forward to greet the king. He expressed his honor at being able to serve the king and mentioned that they had prepared a performance to delight the king. Callian observed all of this from a distance and recognized the man as Baron Melfir, who had taken over the preparations for the horseback riding show instead of the Bryson family. Callian couldn't help but think that it was because of these kinds of situations that he got entangled in unnecessary power struggles. Deep down, he remembered that in the past, Randell, the first prince, got injured during the horseback riding show, and Baron Pawloon faced dire consequences. Baron Melfir gestured for the princes to join him as he had arranged special seats for them. Callian looked up and noticed the same chandelier that was supposed to fall. It struck him as odd that at an event attended by the king himself, the knights should have thoroughly inspected something as significant as the chandeliers, especially with the Bryson family's Pable Knight Corps on standby. This train of thought led Callian to recall the annoying commander of the Pable Knight Corps, and whether he should have given him a chance to live. As Melfir continued guiding the princes, he also expressed his unease about the chandeliers hanging overhead to the event organizer, and urged him to ensure there were no problems. He requests him to examine the same. Baron Melfir gazed up at the chandeliers, contemplating if there was indeed something wrong with them. The horseback riding show commenced, a classic performance. Melfir couldn't help but think about this long-awaited day, where he had the honor of sitting next to His Highness. He recognized the immense effort he had put into making this happen, and he was determined not to let this opportunity slip through his fingers. As he looked around, Melfir's eyes fell on Callian, and he remembered the warning Callian had given him, prompting him to wonder if he had thoroughly checked the ceiling once more. Baron Melfir was open to suggestions and had a sharp mind. He had indeed performed a thorough check of the ceiling and chandeliers before the event began. As he went through the final inspection, he discovered that one of the ropes supporting a chandelier was on the brink of breaking. This revelation left him stunned. What could have caused such a dangerous situation? He couldn't help but imagine the horrifying scenario where the chandelier fell on Randell, the first prince. The mere thought sent shivers down his spine. He couldn't fathom what might have occurred if not for Callian's advice. Melfir was left wondering how Callian had known about this potential disaster. Callian was pleased to see that Melfir Pawloon had taken his advice seriously and had made a wise decision. Kalyan recognized that Melfear was not one to chase immediate benefits but instead looked for better long-term options. Kalyan couldn't understand why the Bryson family had such a strong guard against Paulun, leading to the commotion earlier. It left him curious about the dynamics between these noble families. The show continued, and the audience's cheers filled the air. Kalyan noticed Planche sitting beside him, appearing uninterested in the performance. Planche made a snide comment about Kalyan not knowing his place, which earned him a glare from Kalyan. The host on the stage requested the audience to calm down, reminding them that the show had not ended yet. Then, the next performer was introduced, and the audience awaited the performance. Planche seemed determined to stir up drama, and he continued to taunt Kalyan. He remarked that Kalyan's eyes were so disgusting that they made him want to gag. Planche locked eyes with Kalyan and declared that his dirty blood and pathetic eyes were nauseating to him. His words were intended to provoke a reaction from Kalyan, and he seemed to take pleasure in doing so. Planche's audacious comments didn't go unnoticed, and they reached the ears of both Randall and King Ramen, who appeared visibly disgusted by his words. Kalyan, on the other hand, chose not to engage in an argument and instead played the victim by covering his face. This unexpected response puzzled Planche, but little did he know that Kalyan had a plan of his own. The thought of using the second prince for his own purposes excited Kalyan, and he couldn't help but flash a devilish smile. Queen Celis, however, felt deeply embarrassed by her son's behavior. She had warned this scoundrel repeatedly to behave properly, and she turned back to give him a stern side-eye, only to find him appearing calm and composed as if nothing had happened. At that very moment, Celis came to know that Planche did this on purpose. Celis's frustration grew as she realized that Planche had intentionally embarrassed her on this particular day. She couldn't fathom why he would choose this occasion to act out and humiliate his own mother. The timing and motive behind Planche's actions remained a mystery to her, adding to her exasperation. Queen Celis had already been aware of Prince Planche's troublesome behavior, especially his tendency to speak out in front of the king and others. However, this recent incident had pushed her to a breaking point. With Ellen Manasel supporting Prince Kalyan, it was becoming increasingly clear that Kalyan was a strong contender for the position of Crown Prince. They couldn't afford to remain passive any longer. The time had come to make a critical decision. The pressing question loomed over them like a sword hanging by a thread. Who was the more suitable candidate for the Crown Prince position? The assertive second prince, Planche, or the composed and collected third prince, Kalyan? All the performances came to a conclusion, and fortunately, Randall managed to avoid the unfortunate accident. King Ramen didn't display a significant reaction to the incident involving Planche. This situation disappointed Kalyan, as he had hoped to exploit it further. He also observed that Queen Celis was surprisingly quiet, indicating that the incident with Paulun wasn't part of her plan. Well, so today's incident was something that Celis didn't expect too. At that moment, Baron recalled a conversation from the past when he had discussed this matter with his brother. Baron and his brother had pondered whether the incident involving Randall and Kyrus wasn't just a random act of terror targeting the royals. Baron wondered if there was an external motive behind the attempt to harm the first prince. However, his brother refused to divulge everything directly, believing that it wouldn't be fun if he gave away all the information too easily. Instead, they decided to make a bet. Baron was aware that his brother had lost numerous bets and owed him a substantial amount of money. His brother hadn't forgotten, and he had meticulously calculated the debt. He then planned to drop a hint for Baron, suggesting that this incident seemed less straightforward than it appeared. The individual behind this incident appeared to be quite cunning. It was as if they wanted to be caught targeting royalty, making it all the more perplexing. If the second most powerful Emporium owner in Kyrus was removed, the one who would benefit the most would undoubtedly be Renan Bryson, the most powerful Emporium owner in Kyrus. Kalyan was feeling puzzled, so he turned to Yan and inquired about the significant businesses owned by the Paulun Emporium. Yan informed Kalyan that the Paulun Emporium likely owned the diamond mines. It became clear then, if Paulun were to disappear, the Bryson Emporium would gain significant market influence over diamonds. Kalyan was now convinced that Renan was using his intelligence quite effectively. He had initially considered saving Paulun and waiting to observe the situation, but now Kalyan felt that he deserved some compensation for saving Paulun's life. He instructed Yan to cancel all of his plans after the performance. Yan hesitated, pointing out that most of the nobles would be at the ball. Kalyan, once again, played the victim convincingly. He held his head and told Yan that the comments he had heard earlier were too shocking, and he couldn't bear it any longer. Yan, deeply concerned, understood that Kalyan wouldn't be able to participate in the ball, so they decided to go straight back to the palace. In the palace, King Ramen sat in his room, contemplating the events of the day. His thoughts also dwelled on Ellen Mansel's advice about not waiting passively but taking action. The king recalled Blanche's hurtful comments about Callian. His mind drifted to memories of his late queen, Sisfanian, and how she had struggled on her deathbed, expressing concern for their son, Callian. King Ramain was abruptly brought back to the present when a servant entered the room and announced the arrival of the queen. Queen Celis entered the room, and a servant respectfully offered to bring a fresh set of tea. Noticing the already prepared tea, the queen questioned whether there had been a previous guest. She found it hard to believe this news, as she had received no prior information. King Ramain intervened, instructing the servant that there was no need for a new set of tea, as Queen Celis would be leaving shortly. This took Celis by surprise, but she refrained from reacting. The king then got straight to the point and asked her why she had come. King Ramain was now getting bolder, and it seemed that he was finally learning to take over his power. Here's the video ends. Guys, if you like this recap, then like the video. I will meet you in another video. Till then, bye.